We are recording this talk as of now. I've now remembered to do that. We'll record the entire hour unless there's specific input from people, at which point we can just pause the recording or edit that out at the end. That's entirely up to you, and please let us know if there's anything you want to be edited out, and Donna and I can do that. There should be buttons for speed up, slow down, and reactions. Feel free to use them. It can be really hard talking to a screen of muted participants, so any sort of visible reaction will be great. Apologies for those that come to the Wellbeing Coffee Club, because you'll be sick of hearing me say these next couple of things, but there are absolutely loads of mental health and wellbeing resources on the Yellow Sheet blog and on the IP Inclusive website and on the Jonathan's Voice website. For anyone that would like to speak to a mental health first aider, and usually a fellow trainee, we also have the mental health first aid email, which is informalswelfare@gmail.com. And as always, I just point out that that isn't a crisis line, but rather it's somewhere you can go to speak to someone and get further information. For the others of you that don't know about the Wellbeing Coffee Club, please check out the Yellow Sheet blog. And Andrea, who is in one of the tiny boxes somewhere, will be sending out information about that via IP Inclusive, with the aim to open up that coffee club to trademarks as well as the patent side of things. So let's get into it. Our speaker today is Donna Smith, but before we move on to the main event, we're firstly going to hear from Graham McCartney, who is a co-founder of the mental health charity Jonathan's Voice. I'll let Graham explain more about the charity, but I just want to highlight what amazing work Jonathan's Voice are doing and the impact that they're having throughout the IP sector and wider. It was Jonathan's Voice that were the driving force behind setting up the welfare officer position within the CIPA Informals, and therefore the reason I'm here in this role, and therefore the reason talks like this are being put on. So it's really, I can't give enough praise and gratitude to Graham and Val and everyone else at Jonathan's Voice. So I'm going to give you some respite from my voice and hand over to Graham.
Right, thank you very much. That's a very gracious introduction, Jonathan. I'm very grateful. So if you just bear with me whilst I share my screen, then hopefully I will have just a very short amount of time out of Donna's talk today. Okay, as Jonathan said, I'm Graham McCartney. I'm the co-founder and trustee of Jonathan's Voice, and I'm really grateful for the invitation to talk today. And I'm also very grateful to Jonathan and Andrea and others in the CIPA and CIPMA communities who have supported our work. Let me start by saying, really, we recognise that life as an attorney is a number of things. It's obviously hard work, it's obviously rewarding, it's obviously challenging, but overall I think we can say that it's never an easy profession, and many will face challenges that can potentially harm their well-being. So you might say, well, here am I'm not a patent attorney, I'm not a trademark attorney, how do I know about the IP world? Well, I know about it because probably something like 12 to 15 years ago, our son Jonathan was sitting where you guys are probably sitting, having in the midst of doing exams, having just done exams, being a newly qualified attorney. So Jonathan left university in 2005 and qualified as a patent attorney in 2008 and 2009. And life for him was hard work, rewarding and challenging. And having passed all his exams, he followed the sort of normal track of an attorney through the firm that he was working for and became a partner. And he took on more and more responsibility. However, he obviously challenged himself too much because very sadly and tragically, in October 2017, when he was just over 35, Jonathan took his own life. And it was from that tragic event that we, his family, set up Jonathan's Voice as a charity, a mental health charity with a particular focus on the patent and trademark professions. So that's one reason I know about the challenges, but I think there's another good reason I know about the challenges, and that's through the great work that IP Inclusive have done along with CIPA and CIPMA in conducting mental health awareness surveys. So I just wanted to show you one slide of some of the data they collected. So they had a question in one of their surveys, which went to particularly students, which said, which of the following have adversely affected your work? And 232 people out of around 250 answered that. And if you look at the information, you can see that, you know, something like 50% of people had very high stress levels. Somewhere between 40 and 50 talked about anxiety. Smaller numbers talked about depression and a mental health problem. So I think you can see from that that whoever you are, wherever you are, and whatever stage of your career you're at, you are not alone, however you feel about your work and your career. So that's my first point. Please, you are never alone in this situation. There are many others who are experiencing high stress levels and so on. So our mission, if I can just briefly say what it is very much to open up the conversation about mental health in workplaces, to normalize that conversation, to ensure that people are able to understand and look after their own mental health, and to help people spot the signs of mental health struggles in others, and to know where and how to access and reach out for help. So really, we are working as closely as we can with as many organizations as we can within the IP professions to ensure that those things come about. So how do we do that? Well, we work with organizations and individuals, that's firms and CIPA and CIPMA and IP inclusive, to find positive solutions to mental health challenges so that everyone in the profession may thrive. We really value our fantastic partnerships with IP inclusive, the informals, and the professional bodies. And we have now a brilliant advisory board who guide our work. And I'm really glad to say that Jonathan has joined our advisory board, that the current president of CIPA, Alyssa Inston, has joined our advisory board. And we also have a representative of the CIPMA Council on our advisory board. So we really feel that we have tuned in to the IP professions and the ways in which they need support. So what do we do? Well, we have produced a booklet, which you can see on your screen, Protecting Your Mental Health and Wellbeing, and we brought that out in July. And we are just bringing out this week a new guide called Advancing the Mental Health and Wellbeing Agenda, which I guess has a particular focus for the senior leaders in the profession. And it's a question of talking to the senior leaders specifically about the needs for the right culture in their organizations. But of course, you may all one day be senior leaders, so we would encourage you to look at that guide as much as it being for senior leaders. So we've brought those out. They're available from our website, and you can see the web link there. And we also have now mental health consultants who will work in partnership with firms to develop a mentally healthy workplace. We will run workshops and webinars for individuals and for organizations. And we will support the training of mental health first aiders. So if anyone felt that they wanted to become a mental health first aider in their firm, but there was a lack of resources, then please talk to Jonathan, and Jonathan would then get in touch with us and we could discuss whether and how we might support that outcome. Those are the information on how to contact us. It'll be in the recording, and that's all you will hear from me. I'm very grateful. I hope not to have taken too much away from Donna, and I just hope you all have a great session listening to this, that you learn a lot, and remember that there are many facets to mental health and well-being, and the more of those we can explore, the better for all of us. Thank you, and I'll stop sharing at that point and hand over to Donna.
Oh, sorry, I'm just going to jump in. Thank you very much, Graham. I think we can all agree that, you know, the work Jonathan's Voice is doing is vital, and I'd encourage anyone and everyone to get involved in any way you can. The guides are a really, really useful, important resource, and it's, you know, it's a really good way also to maybe open up that conversation with your firm by saying, you know, hey, look, Jonathan's Voice produced this guide. Can we distribute it internally? What else can we do to work with them? So thank you very much, Graham. So I'm now going to pass the session over to Donna. Donna is a creator of the Burn Bright program, which helps junior lawyers and more generally people in the legal profession to thrive in what we all know can be a very stressful environment. Donna is very familiar with the day-to-day of the legal sector, having started a career as a solicitor. And Donna's been highly recommended and praised. So I will stop talking and pass over to Donna now. And I hope you all really enjoy and make the most out of the next 45 minutes. If you have questions throughout, please post them in the chat. You can either send them directly to Donna or myself, or just post them to everyone if you don't mind them being public. So thank you very much, and take it away, Donna.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. I appreciate that intro, and welcome everybody to the How to Take Back Control and Redefine Failure webinar. Just to add on to a couple of points of the housekeeping that Jonathan has shared with you earlier. First thing I want to say is you will see behind me my trusty flip chart. You'll be pleased to know, I hope, that there are no slides on my presentation. I have learned the hard way this last few months since we've all gone online that the less tech I'm responsible for, the less stressed I am, and therefore the better performance you guys get from me. So it's just me and my trusty flip chart. Now, that is not to say that there won't be some audience participation required. So I am delighted to see some of you with your videos on today. If you can, and you are happy to do so, please pop your video on for me, because it makes such a difference to the interaction and the dynamics of the session. And plus, it helps with the audience participation, which will become apparent soon. The other thing to say is, please, 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 I hope you've got a notepad and pen with you. My aim is that the tools and techniques I'm going to share with you today are going to be easily and immediately applicable. So make sure you capture lots of notes as we're going along. And as Jonathan was just saying there will be some time for questions at the end of the session. So if you'd like to capture your questions in the chat box as we're going along, it would really help myself and Jonathan if you started them with the word question, so that as we're scrolling through at the end, they're easily identifiable. All right, so a little bit about me. As Jonathan was saying just then, I work with law firms and legal establishments who are really wanting to create that culture, that environment that enables their junior lawyers to thrive and burn bright in their legal career. And as you already know, what makes me different from other coaches and trainers in this arena is I used to be a lawyer myself. So I have experienced firsthand what Graham was just saying there about the rewarding and challenging elements of being a lawyer, you know, whether it's the learning the law, managing a caseload, monthly billable targets. Gosh, just the thought of those make my skin crawl even now after all these years. And it's hard to juggle all of those things. And so what that means is when my clients come to me to go through the Burn Bright program, they receive very specific and proven coaching and training on exactly how to burn bright in their legal career. Now, when Jonathan and I had an initial conversation at the start of this year about putting on a webinar like this, we were talking about some of the different topics that we could perhaps speak about. And as I understand it, I think it's fair to say that March in the calendar for specifically patent attorneys, but lawyers as well, more general lawyers, March is quite a stressful month. So am I right in thinking that some of you have recently sat some exams at the start of this month? Give me a thumbs up, either literally or in the reactions. Yeah, so some of you are recovering from exams recently, and some of you are sitting there waiting patiently for some results to land next Monday, if I'm correct. Thumbs up if that relates to you. Yeah, okay. So stressful month. So this idea of taking back control and redefining failure, I think we hit the nail on the head with that one, Jonathan. So what is the aim of the next 40 minutes or so? Quite simply, it's to share with you two techniques. One is a tool to help you regain control, specifically when those feelings of stress, that high level stress and the worries really got a grip of you and you're just in that place of, I do not know where to turn. So I'm going to share with you a tool that's going to help you get back control when that happens. And then the other part of today's session is about creating a mindset shift, that ability to embrace a new definition of failure. Because I don't know about you, the word failure doesn't tend to have very positive connotations, especially in the legal profession. So that's the aim of today. We're going to take back control. We're going to redefine failure. Before we do that, though, it would be really useful to get a sense of what we have in this virtual room when we're talking about stress and worry, etc. So here's your first bit of audience participation. By a show of hands, either literally or with the reactions, or if you can't do either of those, please do use the chat box. I want you to just say, if this applies to you, how many of you in the last month or so have been feeling overwhelmed? Hands up or yes in the chat box. Okay, yeah, seeing some hands up, okay. And how many of you in the last month or so have been feeling emotionally drained, emotionally exhausted? Hands up. Yeah. Okay. And then how many of you in this last month have had this sense of just being unable to meet the constant demands that keep coming your way? You know, as soon as you've got one thing off your to-do list boxed off, another 3 have landed. Or maybe you've cleared out your email box from the emails last week and you've logged on and there's another 50 sitting there. And there's just that sense of, I just cannot keep up with the constant demands. How many of you have been feeling like that? Okay. Thank you. Thank you for joining in on that. That's really, really useful. Okay. So why am I asking you this? Well, it actually links into exactly what Graham was saying at the start with his presentation, is that you will have seen that you weren't the only person putting your hand up or writing yes in the chat box. So you are not alone in how you're feeling. But the thing is, when we are in the grip of stress, of worry, of overwhelm, in that state of, I just can't get on top of things, our inner critic, that voice in our heads, is very clever at making us think we are the only one feeling like that. We look around us and everybody else seems to have got all of their ducks in a row. They're coping brilliantly with all of the challenges they're facing, and you're the only one that's struggling. Well, now you know, you're not. You weren't the only one putting your hand up just then. And the other reason why I start this webinar with those questions is this. Until we own what is going on for us, it's very hard to do something about it. Okay, so by putting your hand up and saying, actually, yeah, this last month I felt overwhelmed, emotionally drained, unable to meet constant demands, you're owning it. And by owning it, you can now do something about it. And that's what we're going to do. So let's dive in with the first tool. And this is the one that links to control. And it comes from this book that some of you may be familiar with, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. If you've already read it, I'd recommend reading it again. If you've never read it, please add it to your reading list. It is full of some fantastic tools, models, and insights that are invaluable. And there's one of those I'm going to share with you right now. And it's linked to Habit 1, which is all about being proactive. And the purpose of sharing this tool with you is to help you feel in control despite whatever's going on around you that is out of your control. Okay. So, and I just see there, Joel, can I pop the book and author in the chat? Absolutely. I'll do that for you in a little while. No problem at all. So I want you to imagine for a moment that all of these marks I'm putting on the flip chart represent for you all of the thoughts, questions, concerns, worries, all that noise that's going around in your head that's creating that sense of overwhelm, that sense of being unable to meet constant demands. And what Stephen Covey says in his book is, of those thoughts, out of all of that noise in your mind, some of those things will quite simply be givens, things you can do nothing about. They just are what they are, okay? He also says, however, that some of those thoughts in your mind are actually things that you are able to influence. Now, you don't have complete control over them, but you can direct the flow of traffic, if you like. And then you'll know where I'm going for the rest of the thoughts that are left in your mind. These are the things that are completely within your control. Now, it's my experience, both personally and from working with a variety of clients in terms of moving from burnout to burn bright, is when we're in that state of overwhelm, when stress and worry have got a grip of us, what's often happening is we're spending our time and energy and our focus here on the things that are just a given, that we can do nothing about. And of course, because we can't do anything about them, what does that do to our levels of stress, our levels of worry, our levels of overwhelm? Well, it adds to them because we can't do anything about them. So imagine how it would be if you were able to focus here on the things that are completely within your control. Can you imagine that? Well, here's the thing. You're going to have a go at doing that now. So this is your first proper piece of audience participation. So what I would like for you to do on a blank piece of paper, I'm going to give you a minute or so, and I just want you to write down, list all of your worries, concerns, stresses, must-dos, should-dos, want-to-dos, uncertainties, you know what I mean, all those things that are buzzing around in your head today that are just on a loop whilst you're trying to focus, whilst you're trying to concentrate. You've got all that noise going on. So I'm just going to give you a minute, write all that down on a list, everything that's in your mind at the moment. They don't have to be in any particular neat order. They don't have to make any sense to anybody but you, but just give yourself this moment to tip out all of those thoughts that are in your mind that are causing that sense of stress or overwhelm. And when you've got that list, or you've got some things down on that list, the next thing I want you to do is categorize the list. So go through your list, and at the side of those things that actually you think, you know what, that is just a given. There's nothing I can do about that. It is what it is. I'd like you to write the letter G at the side of it. Similarly, those things on your list that you look at and you think, okay, I don't have full control over that. I can't dictate the final outcome, but I can influence the direction of travel. Put an I at the side of it because you can influence it. And then those things on your list that are completely within your gift, completely within your control, pop a letter C at the side of them. Okay, pop in the chat if you need another minute just to finish that off, because I don't want to go too quickly. If you need another minute, just put a 1 in the chat. Okay, lovely. So you've got your list, you've categorized it, so you can easily identify those things that are a given, those things that you can influence, and those things that are within your control. The second part of this activity involves identifying the most controllable items on your list. So maybe you've got one, maybe you've got a handful, but I want you just to pick one of the things that have got a letter C at the side of it. Okay, one of the things that's completely within your control. And I'd like you just to journal on the following 2 questions. First question, what could you do to move that particular concern, issue, must do, should do, whatever it is that's completely within your control? What could you do to move that forward this week? We're only on Tuesday afternoon. We've got 3 more working days of the week. What could you do to move that forward this week? And then the second question is, what support might you need to do that? So what could you do to move that controllable issue, question, query, action forwards? And what support might you need? And I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. Okay. So what I'd like to ask now is for possibly 1 or 2 volunteers, if you're happy to share with the rest of the virtual room today, what's been the impact of that process for you? So if you're happy to share, if you could just put your hand up in the reactions tab, and then I know who to come to and ask you to unmute. So would anybody like to volunteer and share what the impact of that process has been for them? Lovely, great. Joel, if you would like to unmute yourself and share with the rest of the group, what's been the impact of that process for you, Joel?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So I've got a new job during the pandemic and I'm looking to move to London because of it. I currently live up north, and obviously with COVID and all that nonsense going on, it's kind of hard to feel like there's no pressure from my employer to be there, but I kind of feel like I need to be there. Mm-hmm. So I'm actually going to London tomorrow, believe it or not, for the first time to go see the office. So I was thinking maybe I could go and view a flat, you know, just to see what things are like and try and move things forward in that way. In terms of support, I guess it's kind of all on me. But if I wanted support, I could ask for, like, you know, if there was a viewing at 2 p.m, it's working hours, I could maybe ask for a slot to go dart out and go see it and then come back to the office or something. Yeah. So it kind of I don't know. It kind of made me feel like it took away the worry somewhat, because I'm kind of dealing with it. I'm actually doing something about it rather than just letting it linger. Definitely. As it has been for the past 2 months or 3 months, however long it's been.
Definitely, Bill, definitely. And what would you say has been the impact on your energy then about this whole idea of moving down to London? What's been the impact on your energy just taking this time to look at it in this way?
Right now?
What's your energy feeling?
I think it's a bit more proactive, right? Because I want to go and do something about it right now. So I'm thinking like maybe I should message my manager or get on Spare Room tonight and have a look at, see if I can book a flat to go see.
Good stuff. Joel, thank you for volunteering that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
For the rest of you, if you want to share in the chat, please do put down what your reflections are on what the impact that process had on you. What realizations have you had? How has that impacted on your energy? Because I think it's such a simple tool, this one is, and it's so easily applicable. So I use this all the time. So maybe, you know, at the start of your day when you're facing a to-do list, as long as you're on, you're thinking, I do not know where the hell to start. Do this, write everything down, categorize it, pick one and take action on that. Maybe you're starting work on a new project and there's so many different elements to it that it's all spinning around in your head. tip them all down, categorize them, pick one you can control and take action on it. It's so simple in its application, this tool, and yet it's so effective in creating what I would call a pattern interrupt. Because when we're in that place of stress and worry and overwhelm, that thought process of I'm stressed, I'm worried, I'm so overwhelmed, it just goes around and around and around in a loop. So by following this technique, using this tool, just the very act of tipping out what's in your mind is a pattern interrupt. The very act of categorizing everything on your list starts to shine a light on where you can actually take some action. And then by picking one and taking action on that, as Joel was saying, it gets you into that proactive energy, gets you into that space of, I can do something about this. And it just turns down the volume on that overwhelm. So I cannot recommend this tool enough. It's so simple, but it really, really works. And then just linking on to that, there's another book I'd like to share with you. So Jonathan and Catherine, if you wouldn't mind finding the link to this one, that would be super. It's Essentialism by Greg McKeown. And in this book, Greg talks about this idea of being clear on where you are investing your time. Are you investing your time and your energy in the right activities? Or are you actually, going back to my previous flip, are you actually allowing yourself to be pulled in directions you don't want to go in? You get to choose what you focus on. Are you choosing to focus on the things in your control? Or are you choosing to focus on the things that are just simply a given? So if you're interested in reading more about it, I'd highly recommend that book. It's, again, some great tools, some great insight, and the link is in the chat. Thank you, Jonathan. It's as if we've planned this. It's just swimmingly along, isn't it? Okay, so that was the first technique I wanted to share with you. The second one is about this idea of how do we redefine failure? And as I was saying earlier, the legal profession is not known as a profession that encourages you to embrace failure, to own your mistakes and learn from them. There's a lot of pressure to get it right first time. So this part of the webinar is all about creating a mindset shift, because to embrace failure in a different light, we need to shift our mindset on it. And this is going to involve me telling you a bit more about my journey. So I hope you will forgive me for talking about myself a little bit, but it's to illustrate the point. So you can see art is not my strongest point. This was me at this. I got the curly hair right, though. You got to give me a credit for that, haven't you? If only I were that thin after COVID. That's a whole other talk. But this was me at the start of my legal career. Okay, and this is me today. This is how I got from there to there. Pop in the chat what you notice about my journey from the start of my legal career to where I am today. What do you notice about that journey? Pop in the chat. What do you notice about my journey from when I first started out on my legal career to today? Yes, it is absolutely not a straight line. And if it were, frankly, it would have been dull and boring. So that's the key thing to say. But you're right, it wasn't from A to B. There was some forward moment, there was some backward moments, there was some ups, there were some downs, and there was even some loop-de-loops. One of the loop-de-loops I want to share with you in particular is my story of the California bar exam. So when I was practicing law, it wasn't enough for me that I was qualified to practice law in the UK. I wanted to be able to practice law in California as well. So whilst holding down a full-time job, I think I was only 18 months qualified as a solicitor, I decided to start studying for the California bar exam remotely. Now we're going back a few years here, so I didn't have it all on a nice online platform. I received this box of CDs recordings of real life lectures that I had to sit and listen to every night and study and learn the different areas of the California legal system. And the exam was a 3-day event, 6 hours a day, 3 days back to back. To say it was intense is an understatement. And rather like some of you today who sat an exam or some exams back in October and you're waiting for results next week, same thing in California. I sat in July and the results were coming out in November. Now, on the day in November when the results were available, you had to log on. I'm doing this like you know what it means. You had to log on. And I remember logging on, really excited. I got the champagne ready. It's like, woohoo, this is the start of the rest of my life. I'm going to be a lawyer in California. Beautiful mountains, gorgeous beaches, round the clock sunshine. Come on. And I logged on, and you'll know what I'm going to tell you by the topic of this part of the webinar. Really sorry to inform you, Donna, you failed the California bar exam. Now, the bar exam was a pass and fail. So you either got enough points or you didn't get enough points. And what made that message even worse is not only did it tell me I'd failed, it told me by how many points I'd failed. 6. 6 points from passing the California bar exam. Probably 1 or 2 points on one of the questions I'd missed out. Now, to put this into context, this was the first thing I'd ever failed. Through all of my academic studies, right the way up to qualifying as a solicitor, I hadn't failed a thing. So to say that I saw failure as a negative is an understatement. I did not know how to deal with it. And at the time, I felt devastated, mortified, embarrassed. I told my whole family and friends back in the UK, I'm never coming back to the UK. I'm living life in California. Because the thing was, passing that bar exam was my entry into getting a professional visa. It was my ability to accept one of 2 really good job offers at law firms in Sacramento. And as a result of 6 points not being there, all that came to an end. Now, fast forward to where I am now, I look back on that, Catherine, I look back on that failure now and I see it oh so differently. I benefited from that failure in so many ways. The first one, it brought me back to the UK, to my family and my loved ones. Second of all, it helped me to see that I really wasn't on the right career path and that I was meant to be destined for something else. But third and foremost, it taught me something about myself I didn't know I had. And that's that inner grit, that determination, that ability to, when it feels like you are at rock bottom, to pick yourself up, dust yourself off and go, okay, what next? Now, this is a really good illustration of what Catherine wrote about in her recent article, that fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. Oh boy, did I ever have to learn the growth mindset after that. And why am I sharing this with you? It's because at the time when I failed, I really did think everything was over for me. I don't even want to share with you the thoughts I was having about myself, but let me just say, it wasn't very pretty in my mind. But I'm grateful for that failure now because I've got so much learning from it. And look at me now. I'm in a role that I love, doing what I love every day and making a difference, which actually was what I wanted for my legal career anyway. I'm just doing it in a different format. So how does this apply to you guys? Well, here is your chance to try on a different mindset when it comes to failure. So I want you to take a moment and just reflect on one of the things that you would consider to be one of your failures. Now, I know you will all have one, and I know you will hate me for asking you this question. I just want you to bring to mind something that has happened to you, either work or personal wise, that you consider to be one of your failures. And what I want you to do, first of all, is write down how you felt about it at the time that happened. So just take a moment, think about that failure and write down how you felt about it at the time. What were you thinking about yourself? What were you saying to yourself? What were you saying to other people about it? How did you feel about that failure at the time? And then take a moment and capture your thoughts on how have you benefited from that failure? What were the good things to have come out of it? As hard and as difficult as it might have been at the time, what are the ways in which you benefited from that situation, that circumstance that you deemed to be a failure? And then finally, take a moment to capture and journal on what you've learned about yourself as a result of that failure that you now use and draw on a regular basis. What was it you learned about yourself as a result of that failure that you now see yourself using and drawing on a regular basis? And then, rather like before, I would love to ask for a volunteer to pop their hand up in the reactions tab, and then I'll invite you to unmute and share your reflections, your observations of looking at failure in this different light. Who would like to share their thoughts and observations? Just pop your hand up in the reactions tab and I'll come find you virtually. Catherine, unmute yourself, please.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. What came up for you doing this activity, Catherine?
Okay, well, the obvious thing would be my undergrad degree result. I went to Oxford for undergrad and I studied physics, so, not one of the easiest subjects in the world. I did quite well in my first year exams. I got a distinction. But when it came to my final degree result, I'll never forget this. I just about missed the boundary for a first class degree, so ended up with a 2-1. And they sent me my degree results by post. And they sent it by first class post, so the envelope with my degree results on said first class on the outside, but it wasn't actually a first class degree. Up to this point, I'd never struggled academically. I've got all A's at A level, so I was absolutely devastated by this result. I kind of felt like sounds ridiculous now, but I kind of felt like a second class person because I've got a second class degree. And sometimes I still feel like that.
Imagine.
So, yeah.
You feel capturing the benefits and what you've learned about yourself as a result of that now. What came up for you on those reflections?
Well, I'm still learning. This does still bother me. I still have days where I feel like a second class person because I got a second class degree. I guess this is why I went on to go to university another 3 times, just to kind of prove to myself that this is a thing that I can do.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing, Catherine. I really appreciate you volunteering to share your story with the rest of the group. This is the thing, our perception of failure can cast a shadow over us for years. What I want to encourage you to do today is continue to journal on those points that I've shared with you and really look at the things that we call failures from a different angle. Really give yourself the time to look at what were the benefits of that? What were the lessons I learned? How can I use those now? Because the more we do that, the more that failure stops being this scary thing that we try and avoid or try and forget. And it becomes something that plays an active and positive role in our development. I've got a lovely quote here by John Maxwell, who is an author and speaker on the topic of leadership. And he says, embrace adversity and make failure a part of your life. If you are not failing, you are probably not really moving forwards. Now, this ability to embrace failure in a different light links back to the first tool that I shared with you. So let's play out a scenario. For whatever reason, some people next week will get a message like what I did at the California Bar exam. You failed the exams, okay? That exam result, that's a given. There is nothing we can do today about the exam results that are coming out on Monday. And if they aren't what you want, there's nothing we can do about those. It's a given. The opportunity to control and influence the outcome of the results has gone now because you sat the exams months ago. What is in your control now is what you choose to do next. Do you choose to, going back to my previous top-notch drawing, do you choose to sit here and focus on how you could have studied more, how you could have worked harder, how you could have worked longer, even though focusing on that is not going to change the results? Or do you choose to go here and go, okay, what have I learned from this? What did I do well in the run up to the exams that I'll do again next time? And what could I do differently that's going to help me next time? In his book, Stephen Covey says, the proactive approach to a mistake is to acknowledge it instantly, correct and learn from it. This literally turns a failure into a success. You are not defined by your failures. You are defined by how you respond to them. And to finish, I have I don't know whether to call it a reading or a poem, but you'll get what I mean as I start reading it. But it's a reading that I'd like to share with you. And it's been attributed to a number of authors. So rather than get it wrong, I'm going to say author unknown. And some of you might be familiar with it because it really sums up the whole point of this webinar. Watch your thoughts, for they become words. Watch your words, for they become actions. Watch your actions, for they become habits. Watch your habits, for they become character. And watch your character, for it becomes your destiny. You have the freedom to choose. You have the freedom to choose what you're focusing on, and you have the freedom to choose how you define failure, what you make it mean. So that's all I wanted to say on the topic of taking back control and redefining failure. We've got a few moments spare. So Jonathan, if we could open up the floor to any potential questions that we've got, and then I'll say one final thing at the end, if I may. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Donna. I think all of you, that was a great session, and it will be super helpful for lots of us, especially in light of exam results coming up and you know how we deal with them. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to raise your hand, or we can pop them in the chat. That will be absolutely fantastic. I'm happy to start with a question. And I guess I was kind of thinking of what's the most common, I guess, bad or negative habit you come across in junior legal professionals that is common to a lot of people? I know worrying about things you can't control is obviously a big thing, but I wondered if you had any thoughts on that.
There are a few, but the one that comes immediately to mind is this immense pressure to prove that whoever you're working for was right to take you on. And that sort of need to prove yourself disguises itself in any number of ways. So for example, worrying about asking for help. You know, if there's something you're working on that you're not sure of, what I see in many of my clients is, well, I can't possibly ask because they'll think I can't do it, which means they'll think they shouldn't have taken me on. So it shows itself in a number of different ways. So that would be a key one. This moment you get taken on as a trainee, it's almost like someone switches on and you must be perfect or they'll think they shouldn't have taken you on. And that's just not true. And that really is where this idea of failure being a negative thing comes from. We're not encouraged to make mistakes. Certainly when I was a junior lawyer, I really didn't feel like it was an environment where I was encouraged to make mistakes and learn from it. I was very much brought up in that conditioning of you get it right and you get it right first time. So that is one I see a lot of, Jonathan. Thank you for asking that.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Sarah Abu
Shahada.
Thank you.
Right. And it's Sarah. I know it's spelled Sarah.
Oh,
It's be difficult. So I really liked your chat about redefining failure, and I do think, you know, that's a really important skill to have. And, you know, some of my biggest failures in my life are now my moments of pride because of how I dealt with them.
Yes.
The problem I found with this industry, though, is I'm no stranger to failure and I know how to deal with it. The problem is, and I've worked for a few firms, you'll get bosses who go, well, you know, you didn't do this very well. You didn't seem to care. And you're like, no, I'm just not, I didn't care. It's just that I'm trying to manage this. I can sit and grovel. I've said I'm sorry. Or, you know, in my case, I had failed one of my final exams and I couldn't do anything about it. It was done. And your boss is turning around and going, your attitude isn't quite right. Like, how do you deal with that external factor coming in? Because it's very hard. I can handle myself, but when you got someone who's almost going to say yes or no to your, you know, you having a job, going, are you failed this? How do you deal with that?
It's a tricky one. Sorry, it really is a tricky one. And it's that classic case of, like you say, you can control yourself, but not those around you. One of the things that I wish I'd done more of when I was a junior lawyer, and again, it's that having the confidence to find your own voice. One of the things I wish I'd done is gone back to them and go, okay, I hear what you're saying. From my perspective, I feel like I gave it my all and it still wasn't enough. What would you suggest, or how would you point me in the right direction as to what else I could do differently? And they won't like it. I can see you smiling. They'll be like, don't you push it back on me. But what you're doing there is acknowledging that you've heard what they've said, but you're not internalizing it for you by saying, actually, I think I did my best. It didn't get me to where I wanted to. I hear what you're saying. What else was missing? If you were me, what would you do now if you were me? And as much as they won't like it, they cannot not want to answer that question. So that's what I would do. I would play it back and go, yes, I hear you. There's more to be done. Please help me find out what that is. Because they are there to supervise you, to manage you, to support you, and to help you grow and develop. But sometimes some of our managers, some of our bosses need a bit of a nudge to remind them that that's what they're there to do. I hope that helps. I just saw a question in the chat. So Joel, I found myself putting a lot of my worries into the given category and therefore allowing myself to pass them off as I can't do anything. How do I go about putting things in the right category the first time, or is being aware of it just enough? Great question, Joel. So first and foremost, you've hit the nail on the head there. Awareness is absolutely key. So not only is it great that you've got the awareness of the things that are in your list, you've now got that awareness of, actually, I'm putting majority of them in the G box, so I can go, there's nothing I can do about that. So again, you cannot not know that now. So what I would recommend you do is go back to the items that you've categorized as being simply a given. And maybe some of them need breaking down into smaller chunks. Because if you look at it from a bigger picture, it can seem like it is just a given. But if you break it down into smaller chunks, you will be able to identify parts of it are a given, but parts of it are things that you can actually control. So use it as a starting point and go through it as many times as you need to get to that place of you are in control, because it is there. I hope that's useful, Joel.
Yeah, I think they're really important points. And I think Sarah's question especially, and David's comment in the chat, is a very important point, because all of our managers or senior leadership generally starts off as scientists, high achieving scientists, like all of us in this room generally, and you know, they're not trained to be managers. So it can be a really tricky situation. And I guess it's a good time to loop back around and highlight the work that Jonathan's Voice are doing, and that the senior leadership booklets and resources are meant to help senior leadership and managers learn how to manage in a way that reduces stress, and learn to not manage in a way that just piles the stress all onto the trainee. So I think that's a really, really good point. I've also got a comment from a book recommendation from Oz, that is The Obstacles is the Way by Ryan Holiday. The Obstacle is the Way. So that's another book to go check out that Donna might be able to comment on.
It's not one that I've read, but it is on my reading list on Audible, so I will be getting around to that one shortly. Definitely. Any further? I'm conscious that we're coming up to the 3 o'clock mark, so I don't want to run over, but were there any last minute questions or comments that anybody would like to share before Jonathan and I wrap this up for you guys? Yes, Josh. Unmute yourself.
Hey everyone, can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. So I actually had the pretty much exact opposite problem to Joel. So pretty much all of my worries came under control. Right. But I'm a bit tentative, I guess, to just do them all, because I feel like more will just come up. Do you have any suggestions as to what to do in that case?
Absolutely. So here's the thing, Joel. Sometimes when that happens, it can end up feeling like we've just created a newer level of overwhelm, because it's like, damn it, everything's in my control. So clearly I'm not handling everything and I should be in this pickle. That's not the case.
Exactly.
What I would recommend you do in that case is separate those elements that you can control onto a new list and just look at them. I was going to say logically then, but when you're in the midst of overwhelm and stress, there's never much logic going on, but just look at them and have an honest assessment of, if there were one of those on there that if you could just move that forward, it would make a difference. And just pick one. The feeling that we've got to do them all is what creates the overwhelm. So my encouragement to you, Joel, would be pick one. What's the one that instinctively, and not the one that necessarily is the one saying, well, I ought to do this one. Go with the one that instinctively is saying, do me first, because your instinct is there for a reason and we should learn to trust it and tune into it. So go for that one first, get that one done, then go back to the list. And just know that, this is going to sound really cheesy, please forgive me, Rome was not built in a day. You know, the feelings of overwhelm, the feelings of stress and worry and anxiety, they didn't happen overnight. So to reverse that trend is not going to happen overnight either. But it starts with taking one step at a time. So pick one, go for that, then go back to your list and just trust that you'll know which one to go for.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
great. I often find that if I have a list, I'd pick the absolute easiest thing, and then by ticking that off fills me with sort of a get up and go to do more after that.
Yes, low hanging fruit approach.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's amazing. Donna, do you have any final words to wrap up before?
Yeah, so first of all, just say thank you so much for your time today, guys. I really do appreciate you tuning in and listening. If you've got any questions about this that actually you didn't feel comfortable raising in the chat or on the call, please do reach out to me via my website. And the other thing to say is on Thursday, I am running a free session on the Burn Bright Masterclass. So you'll have heard me mention the Burn Bright program a couple of times today. So on Thursday, I'm doing a 1-hour masterclass that talks you through the 6 fundamental principles. So if you're free on Thursday at 12:30 and you want to come along, I'm going to put the link in the chat. That should have come through now. You'd be more than welcome to come along and hear more about how you can burn bright in your legal career, not out. That was everything from me, Jonathan. Back over to you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Donna. That's been a really, really, really good hour. Thank you to Donna. Thank you to Graham for the introduction for Jonathan's Voice. And also thank you to Andrea, who has helped me a lot with organising this event through the IP Inclusive Mental Health First Aid Network. So I think that's it. We will be hanging around in the chat if anyone has any further questions they want to ask. But other than that, thank you very much for coming, and hopefully I will see you at the next Wellbeing Series talk. Thanks a lot.